Okay, friends. So, no, it's not working. It's not live. Okay, friends. So, no, it's not working. Can a tech person come up here, please? This is not. It delays my sound,
Where's the phone?
See, it's not showing me. Can check somebody. It's on the YouTube. It's on the.
Escape. Escape key.
Where? Which one?
Oh, it's on the keyboard. The front corner.
It delays my sound. Is that YouTube or Zoom? It says Zoom. Oh, it's not recording, but it's okay. That's the problem. I'm sorry, folks.
Judah, you see that?
Yeah, I'm trying to not record it on Zoom, but I guess I have to.
Is Judah down there again?
I'm not sure.
Wait, it's upstairs. Is it upstairs? I just heard a door.
So that's.
You said you want to record it or you don't want to?
I'm not sure. It's not showing me Zoom. Which one? YouTube or Zoom? It says Zoom. Oh, it's not recording.
You want it on YouTube?
That's the problem. Forget it. I don't know what's going on. Try to do a change and everything gets messed up.
You know more than I do.
I don't know if it's still on YouTube Live or not. It says YouTube.
Is it good? No. Good thing you help.
In the kitchen.
Never mind. I don't know what's going on with it. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, see, it's recording on two different things at the same time. They're mixing up.
How about restarting?
Mm-hmm.
Restarting the laptop.
Yeah, I'm going to sign out. This is
Sign out and restart.
Judah warned me. You got to test these things first before trying anything new. Okay.
Should I go and find him out there?
No, now it's okay. I'm going to record it on Zoom. I'm back on Zoom and out of YouTube, I guess. Oh, it's on YouTube. Okay, friends. So it's all about the Buddha's teaching about conditioning and suffering. So anyway, in this Dhamma talk, I want to speak about the Dhamma. Now, what is the Dhamma? Now, when you ask a Buddhist person what is the Dhamma, they'll normally say it's the teachings of the Buddha. But then they'll say, well, what did the Buddha teach? He taught the Dhamma. What is the Dhamma? What did the Buddha teach? So, how are you going to get at the essence of it, right? So basically, the Dhamma means the laws of nature. And what the Buddha taught was basically about the laws of nature. but specifically concerning the nature of suffering and happiness. What is the nature of suffering and what is the nature of happiness? And what is the cause of suffering and what is the causes for happiness? And how did you make suffering go away so that you can achieve happiness? And that's the way to live, think, and meditate that will cause the remove the factors in our mind that cause suffering. So the Four Noble Truths, basically, to keep it simple, the Buddhist teachings are formulated in the Four Noble Truths, that suffering exists. And suffering is defined as three levels. The physical level of suffering concerning these bodies. So these bodies are subject to being born, to get broken bones, to get diseases, to grow old, have all kinds of problems, and then die. So that's called the physical level of suffering connected with this body. And then there's a level of suffering connected to the mind, of not getting what you want and getting what you don't want. And that means basically dissatisfaction with what is. So you're always wanting something else, or you have fear of getting things coming back to you. And that's connected with pleasure and pain. So it's more mental suffering, and the grief and all the emotions and so on that are created by the physical level of suffering. Not getting what you want. You want health, but your body gets sick. You want things to be the way they should be, but they're not. So you fight against reality, against the flow of reality, which is impermanence. So basically, the cause of suffering is not understanding the truth about our mind and how our mind has gotten caught up in the web of karma and the law of cause and effect that we'll talk about. And then how do you reach the end of suffering? By removing the causes of suffering, you gradually come to the end of suffering. And then how do you do that? Well, the Buddha prescribed the Noble Eightfold Path, which is like medicine. Like a doctor diagnoses a disease and he gives you medicine. If you don't take the medicine, you might get stuck in your disease and then, die from it. But if you take the medicine, hopefully you might get cured and then you can, live longer. So basically, that is the outline, very general outline of these Four Noble Truths. And so, but again, the suffering has three levels. The physical level and the mental level, there's a third one, what I call spiritual suffering. That means suffering from not knowing the truth. Now, a lot of people might have good health a lot of their lives, and maybe, their lives are not too chaotic and hectic, and maybe not a lot of problems, nobody in their family is getting robbed and killed or raped and pillaged and, all kind of other things. Things are going, okay. And then they might think, I don't have any problems. But they're still disconnected from the truth. There's still a little me in the world out there, and they're always having to be defensive, and they're doing things that could prevent the big bad world from, overwhelming them. So people surround themselves with toys, all the latest gadgets and material things to, and whenever something happens, they have the money to go somewhere else and avoid things. And so a lot of people, but they're suffering from not knowing the truth and being separated from the whole. And that's what I like to call spiritual suffering. But it comes from not knowing the truth about the mind, basically. So those three levels of suffering are what is included in that noble truth of suffering. Then the cause of the suffering is basically not understanding how all this happened. Look, the young baby is born, right? Then it grows up and it watches what its parents and family members are doing, and And then as it continues to grow up, it learns its various habits. It just copies and mimics what the parents are doing, what the neighbor kids are doing, what they're being taught in school. And, they're not taught to question things too much. And so as we grow up, we picked up all kind of habits, like using bad language, maybe telling little lies, maybe, stealing things. I talk from my own experience, and so on. So, by the time a person is 20 years old, their mind is full of all kinds of emotions and caught up in loves and hates and struggling and, all of its likes and dislikes and getting frustrated with things not going the way they want and having to deal with other people and situations, whether it's political, religious, and so on. So there's a lot of worries. People have developed worries, fears, anxieties, and so on. And basically, where'd all this come from? All of a sudden, you're 20 years old. You got all this stuff in your mind. Where'd all this come from? So that was what the Buddha really wanted us to probe and examine. How did our mind get into the state that it's in? Are you feeling sad a lot, or you're worried, or you're anxious, or whatever mental states that you have, diseases? Where'd all this come from? Because we look around and we see other people are different, not other people. People have more suffering than you, and other people seem to have less suffering than you. And everywhere in between. So, how did all this happen? Because God wanted it that way. Okay, that might be somebody's answer, but not everybody may, be able to relate to that. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha said it has deep causes. There's deep causes for that. So this brings me back to explaining where did it start, at least in this life. Let's say the little baby's born, or the mother and father have some fun at night and produce a new little embryo. And for 9 months, that one-cell organism multiplies inside the mother's womb, and it comes out after 9 months. So during that 9 months, that whole process of this new baby developing was occurring in the present moment. And it was occurring just through natural causes and conditions. And the baby's mind was basically just, undeveloped at that point. But when the mother and father come together and produce that one-cell organism, it needs a spark in order to start that process of cell division. So the spark is like lighting a fire. If you gather up dried leaves and dried twigs, and then just look at it and say, start. Is it going to start? You got to, put a spark or a match to it, right? So that spark or match is the consciousness that's coming from another plane of existence or another life. And it finds that womb and it goes in there and ignites the reproduction cycle. And then for 9 months that baby's developed. So that's why people that have miscarriages or the baby dies in the womb, it's because the consciousness wasn't able to get connected to the body or not in the proper way. The consciousness is that life force that keeps driving it. But if it's cut off for whatever reason, and that's very mysterious and we don't always know, then the baby dies. But anyway, so the baby comes out. And his mind is still in the present moment. How many mothers are out there? Okay, so the baby's born, It comes out of the womb, and all of a sudden it gets all these contacts, bright lights at the hospital. And then, maybe the doctors use these forceps on its skull and pulling it out. You got all this pain. But anyway, it comes out. And then, but its mind is still basically, for 9 months it was just in the womb it was still kind of in that state as it comes out. And it's like, it doesn't have any sense of me or I in it. But the parents give it a little name, little Johnny, little Susie. And then the relatives come over and, Gucci, Gucci, goo, and start paying a lot of attention to it. But still, its mind is very expansive and it doesn't really know what's happening. But little by little, as it gains a language, the parents, you gave it a name, that's right. Okay, you're a mother, right? So how long did it take from the day you gave the baby the name? How many times did you call its name before it actually turned its head and recognized that you were calling him? You probably didn't count this number of times. But it might have been many months, maybe 6 months, maybe more. Sometime within 6 months or a year, finally, one day you call the baby's name and it looks, and then you're so happy. It's recognized you now. So now it's identified this word, Susie, as somehow referring to this thing, this body, or me. And all the relatives come over it again, they start giving it things, and little by little, what used to be oceanic awareness, that expanded oceanic awareness without a sense of an I, little by little, it starts to coalesce and contract. And now it's a sense that the baby's looking through this eyeballs. There's a little me that's looking through the eyeballs. And everything that's happening to it belongs to this me. But that was created in the mind. That wasn't part of the original pure consciousness, or the original consciousness. And then the baby starts to experience all these sensations, pleasant sensations, painful sensations. And then the sweet grandmother comes by the first time the baby ever tasted chocolate. Grandmother comes by and gives the baby its first chocolate. And touch the tongue. And then the baby, big grin on its face, right? Because it's producing a pleasurable feeling. But then the uncle or the father maybe grab the baby and hold it too tight and squeeze it and cause the baby some pain. And if that happened a few times, little by little, the baby's mind starts to identify that source of pain as being something it doesn't like. And the source of whatever brings it pleasure, like the sweet words of the mother, or, nursing on the mother's, the mother gives a pleasant feeling, and the chocolate or something else. So it starts to differentiate between pleasurable feelings and painful feelings. And then because it's getting a mixture of those, it starts to want the pleasurable feelings more because it doesn't like the painful ones. And then it starts hoping that grandmother will come in the future because it's expecting the pleasurable feeling from that. Or it's hoping that the father or whatever else it was that caused it pain won't come. So this is the birth of the past and the future in the mind. The past and the future are created within the mind, within consciousness. And it's connected with pleasure and pain. So the future, everything we want from the future is normally based on an idea of it's going to bring you some benefit. It's going to bring you some happiness. Like, where are you going to go tonight to have your tasty meal? Or what sounds you put on to listen to nice music? Or any number of things. Where you're going to go, it's going to, what you imagine is going to bring some peaceful state. And then you're worrying and planning how to keep away the things that bring pain, how to keep it away. So the mind gets caught up in this constant back and forth between seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And its whole life basically is oriented on that. And it's connected to the past and the future because it has lost that natural connection to the present moment. So that's why the babies, before that sense of I and the past and future came into their mind, they were usually in a very open, happy state because it wasn't connected to a me. Sure, they might cry or something because of a dirty diaper or hunger or something else, but that's kind of just an instinctual, reaction. So, and the baby starts crawling. It starts crawling and it starts to, want to grab this and grab that. So that means its mind is out in the future. And little by little, it gets connected from the present moment. So the more you're searching around when you do things, that draws the mind out into the future. Or the opposite of going back into your memory and worrying about the past. Are they going to find out I told that lie? Oh no, my in-laws are coming. I don't want them to come. So by remembering the past, we create anxiety for ourselves. And by thinking of the future, knowing that we may not get it, we also create anxiety, but also hope that we might get some happiness in the future. So basically, that's the predicament. So the mind is always seeking for happiness. And if we can't get happiness from what is around us in the natural sphere, then we want to create it. If we don't have the money to buy an ice cream cone or a pastry, we might then want to steal it or steal some money from somebody to go buy what you want or any other object. Or to cause pain to others. So in the course of satisfying our desire for happiness and our fear of pain, we may kill others, beat others, steal, rape, pillage, plunder, and do every kind of negative action to satisfy that phenomenon. And basically the whole life revolves around that. And in the process of doing that, we get caught in the web of karma. So the web of karma, means whatever action we do, and this comes back to old Sir Isaac Newton and his laws of physics. How many people have read Sir Isaac Newton, the laws of physics? So one of the popular ones is, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the law of karma states the same thing. Whatever we do by body, speech, or mind will have an equal and opposite kind of effect. So if we do things motivated on greed, hatred, and delusion means ego-centeredness, if we do our actions based on that, it will produce pain and suffering because it will cause us to, do those, like break the precepts, and those other negative actions. And if you do the opposite, if things that you do and think about are based on non-delusion, on non-greed, and non-hatred, that means kindness, wisdom, selflessness, and other good qualities, patience, generosity, and so on, then these will have more, less painful reactions and conduce to more happiness. Because really, happiness is a natural state of our consciousness when it's not wanting the past or future. The mind that's resting in the neutral vibration of just present moment awareness, it's fully satisfied because all problems are problems of the past and the future. Think of any problem you have and see if it isn't connected somehow to the past. These people did that to me in the past. Or the future, I'm not going to be able to get that in the future. These people are trying to deny me what I want in the future. And that causes us, our various, mental states. So when the mind is resting in the present moment, there's nothing to judge, there's nothing to remember, there's nothing to, react to. Because all reactions are reactions to get something or to get away from something. And this is a very deep, depth psychology. It's the psychology of the mind. And the Buddha understood this very clearly. And that is where the second noble truth of the cause of suffering means being disconnected from the truth or being disconnected from the present moment. And that means our body, because this body is always in the present moment. It's always just here. Your breath is going in and out. Your heart is beating. Your body is sitting like this, or it's sitting like this, or your head is going like this, or it's turning this way. Your arm is lifting up and going down. If your mind is fully aware of that and not thinking about anything else, basically that's the present moment. So that's why the Buddha taught that this body, the breathing body, is the natural connection to the present moment, because it is in the present moment. It's our thoughts about what you're going to do with the body later, or what you did with in the past, which drags up memories of fear, anxiety, worry about getting caught, or whatever. So this is really the essence of the wisdom, of the right understanding, of understanding how our mind has got caught into this. But it really is that having been disconnected from the body. Because for 9 months, that's all you knew was this body, the sensations going through it. Look at in 9 months, you went from a one-cell organism to how many cells in a human body? Billions and billions or trillions, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff going on, right? In the space of 9 months. From an invisible little thing to this 100 and more pounds of flesh and bones. There's a lot going on there. And all that was, the baby was, that's what it was connected to. And actually the consciousness, that spark. Okay, see if you can, imagine this or just, So at the moment of conception, and then the consciousness plugs into that and starts that process. And keeps it going. And that consciousness, with each cell division, that consciousness goes into each succeeding cell. So if you can visualize this, so that every cell of our body has a type of awareness, which comes from the electrons, which quantum physics and so on is now starting to understand, that electrons are one of the sources of life force, and because that's what created the whole world. Every scrap of matter has electrons in it. And so that's why it's, that's really what has created everything. So let's say that, every cell of the body has awareness. And they're all interconnected in what I call the inner internet. We all think about the outer internet, right? But actually, the outer is just a projection of the inner. So we have the inner internet. And all the data coming through our senses, goes through the brain, and it's sorted out and put into all these little boxes of the past, the future, this and this and this and that. And even the sense of I. So, so every cell in the body basically has awareness. And that awareness at the electronic level, at the atomic level, is basically just pure vibration. Without thoughts, any conditioned thoughts in it. It's only when it as it moves through the nervous system on the way to the brain, and in the brain it starts making all these connections, and somehow this little sense of me, oh, I own the consciousness. Now I'm the one that's seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, thinking, deciding. No. But that's illusion. So it's good to understand that. I mean, this is our life. There's nothing apart from that. We live in our minds. But whoever teaches us that, nobody. And whoever teaches us to stay with the body. You know, when you're a young child, your mother or father said, now look, son or daughter, you know, when you're going here, you know, keep connected to your body. Don't get just lost in the future. Just remember what you're doing. Okay, I'm standing now, sitting, moving, you know. Anybody tell you that? The doctor tell you that? Donald Trump tell you that? Sorry. So that's the main thing. So the poor baby, out of no fault of its own, has been led to get carried away out of the body, lose that connection with the present moment, and now gets trapped in the past and the future, simply because they weren't taught. And that is what the Buddha meant by ignorance. Not understanding how all that evolved, and then being trapped, especially in those negative ways, because most of the ways bring suffering, because it's produced on wanting pleasurable feelings and avoiding painful feelings. So in the process of that, you're going to lie, cheat, rape, steal, pillage, plunder, malicious speech. Every single negative action is done out of being caught in that conditioned web of the future and the past. So how to get out of it? See, this is the wonderful thing. The Buddha, in his deep meditation, that's what he was focused on. Not how can I make $1 million or $1 billion, or, you know, going out to some planet, you know, someplace else. He was interested in the cause of suffering as it's created within the mind. Let there be a God or let there not be a God, it doesn't matter. Buddha didn't care about that. Even if there's a God, you still live in your mind. And if there isn't a God, you still live in your mind. So, you know, in the Dhamma, it's all about the mind and about how the mind creates its perception of the external world. Now, we're not saying that the external world doesn't exist. Now, some philosophers try to say that the external world doesn't even exist. But the Buddha said, no, even that is an extreme. Because there's 8 billion people on this planet. We're on the same earth, but yet everybody's mind is different. And even within your own family, you got 2 or 3 brothers, sisters, mother, father, uncles. Everyone thinks differently. Everyone has their different desires, their different opinions. You know, maybe the mother's a Democrat or Republican, vice versa, and they're fighting. So that shows that this earth is not really where we live. We live in our mind. You know, caught up in our worries. Now, how many of you today in the morning's meditation got lost in your thoughts for a few minutes before I started saying 1 or 2 or 3? Now, during that time, did you completely forget that you were even sitting here in this room?
A couple times.
And how many thought about the future? How many thought about the past? How many thought about both? So was that your mind? And then when I said something, you oh my God, where was I? Right? You're totally lost in your mind. And so, you know, that's the meaning of it. Because we didn't have an anchor, our mind wasn't sufficiently trained to keep that connection to the body. So by continually just remembering sitting, sitting, or standing, standing, walking, walking, laying down, lifting the arm, turning the head. That's the that's the subtle connection to the present moment. So if you can able to maintain that at least much of the time, when the mind starts to go out and get lost, it reaches the end of that rope and gets stopped. It's sort of like training a wild dog, a kuta. It's in Hindi language, kuta. So if you get a dog, let's say you go to the pound, the animal shelter, and you get a unruly dog. He's always barking, running around, jumping up on people. So you have to train it, right? Or it's in the yard and it starts chasing the mailman down the street and biting him, or people riding on the bicycles. So what do you have to do? You have to put him on a leash or a collar and tie that to a tree or a big stake. So let's say a 10-foot leash. So the dog is sitting there, and then he sees somebody riding by on a motorbike or bicycle, or there's somebody walking. He starts to bark. And he starts to run out. But he reaches the end of the chain and gets stopped. So he's barking, but he can't actually go bite the mailman or the cyclist. And so if you do that enough, he's going to realize, what's the use of running after this person? I can't even, it does no good. I just tire myself out. So then he stops running after them and sits down by the post, just enjoys the present moment. So that's very similar to how we train our mind, how the Buddha had us train our mind. And so, because again, the body, we have it with us all the time. We have to carry this 100 and more pounds of body around with us all the time. It's a big burden. So if we have to carry it around with us all the time, why not use it for a useful purpose? Instead of going to Muscle Beach and in Santa Monica, trying to impress people with big muscles, or going to beauty contests, and things like that. Why not? Sorry if I'm being a little bit facetious, but you get the picture, right? You get my drift. So why not use it for a useful purpose to reduce suffering? That's the way the Buddha thought. But how many people think like that? Not many. That's why they call him the Buddha. So the Buddha understood all this because through his meditation, he could clearly see deep into the mind and how it worked. Because he wasn't interested in a God or no God. He wasn't interested in infinite space and infinite consciousness. His sole purpose was to discover the source of suffering. And he realized that, sure, there's the external world that causes problems to the body and so on, but the source of that suffering is allowing your mind to get dragged out and caught in the web of karma, especially the negative karma. And then the suffering that comes back to us from those karmic connected actions. Or how to create wholesome karma that brings more peace and happiness to ourselves, or at least reduces the amount of suffering. So if you don't want to worry about getting caught for telling a lie, don't tell lies. And if you don't want to worry about getting caught for having stolen something, don't steal something. Or if you don't want to get caught for having cheated on your income tax, don't cheat on your income tax. Because that's a form of lying or cheating, or anything else. I just use those examples because they're common examples. But virtually it refers to almost anything that you could possibly do. And that's why the Buddha wanted us to have mindfulness. And so the third noble truth is the cessation of suffering. So if suffering is caused from the results of our negative actions, and that includes ignorance, and then the actions that come from ignorance. So the underlying ignorance is the biggest cause of suffering. But in order to prolong the sense of self, we have to go on having desire and aversion. Because desire and aversion is only kept strong as long as we have a sense of self. And the sense of self is only kept strong when we keep on activating and repeating greed, hatred, and delusion. Building up our ego, increasing our desires, having more fear of aversion, not being able to tolerate pain. So we're constantly itching this and scratching this and looking at that and causing stress to the body for such unnecessary wastes of energy. So, so the second noble truth is, first you have to understand the cause of suffering. Only then can you remove the cause. It's like a doctor. You go to the doc and you say, "Hey, doc, I got a pain here, and I got a pain here, and I this and that." He listens to that. And he listens to these symptoms, right? And then he comes to the conclusion, well, I think you have a liver problem or a kidney problem or whatever it is. You got poison ivy, whatever. You got a irregular heartbeat. So, and then he finds the cause of the disease, and then he prescribes the cure. So you come to the end of that disease by taking the medicine, to come to the end of that. And the medicine is the Noble Eightfold Path, the fourth noble truth. The way to live, think, and meditate that will allow the mind to unravel all those knots of karma, negative karma, and create new patterns of wholesome karma. So wholesome karma produces pleasant results that lead toward gradually reaching liberation. Negative karma based on greed, hatred, and delusion keeps the mind going, getting more and more enmeshed, enchained to the wheel of dependent origination. So that kind of in a nutshell is the picture of the Four Noble Truths about suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering. But the end of suffering can only come about by practicing, taking the medicine. And that Noble Eightfold Path starts with
Right view.
right understanding. So understanding our predicament. So that's why the Buddha wanted us to gain a right understanding, even if it's intellectual, about the Four Noble Truths. So basically, right understanding means understanding the Four Noble Truths. But there's three levels of understanding. The first is intellectual level. That means hearing about it. Let's say you never heard any Buddhist teaching. You came to this talk and you heard me talking or reading the book, and wow, I haven't heard about this before. That sounds pretty cool. Let's check that out. So you read something new and you get some motivation to want to learn more. So that intellectual understanding gets you started to want to learn more, or maybe to start practicing meditation. And then you're practicing the precepts. So you understand that breaking the precepts causes suffering, creating the opposites of, the opposite qualities, reducing greed, hatred, and delusion by following the precepts creates less fear, worry, remorse, and guilt, and the mind becomes more balanced. And so you practice that a while, oh yeah, Well, seems to work, Haven't told any lies for a couple of weeks and I've had better sleep, We haven't hold this resentment, against this person or that person that, did me wrong. Sending them out loving kindness. The mind's more relaxed. So like that, as you begin to practice a little, you say, this stuff works, And it didn't cost you a membership in the gym, or it didn't cost you, anything, except for just, being in yourself in your house or walking around and seeing your own mind. So that second level of understanding is called the understanding that comes through meditation and reflection. It's even even a low level of meditation, developing mindfulness, some degree of concentration, and investigating the Dhamma, see how things are working. And your understanding now is not so much only intellectual, it's now through your own experience. You see how doing these certain things have their good effects. And then at some point, when you've developed those qualities of mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, and the other steps of the Eightfold Path enough, then you might have the very deep, profound insights that lead to a more deeper and lasting kind of transformation of your consciousness. But so that's how the right understanding is important. And then the second step is right thought. So having gotten an intellectual understanding of the Four Noble Truths, you have to start thinking about it. Because if you don't think about it, you have to forget it. And so thinking and reflecting, thinking about what you read, and reflecting, that means observing how things are working. Anytime you did some negative action, see what kind of a painful effect it had, or how easily you're trapped in this cycle of wanting to rub and scratch and get bugged and irritated by small little things that don't really mean much. Yes. And so that's why the right thinking about the Dhamma is important. Thinking about it goes from just your head, down into more what they say, the heart. So you've got right understanding and right thought. Now what are you going to do? Right speech. Clean up your tongue. Clean up your mouth. That means to practice right speech, the third step of the Eightfold Path, to avoid telling lies, slanderous, backbiting, tale-telling speech about talking about others behind their back, spreading rumors in order to get something from that or make them fall from grace. We see that happening in politicians all the time. And then harsh speech, using curse words at people and so on. And then useless sort of speech. So because there's a lot of karma created through our speech. A lot of it's motivated out of greed or hatred. Get what we want and avoid what we don't want. Or causing others to give them pain. Insulting others, telling jokes about others. In order to make us feel better, we want to denigrate others. So, and then your actions, the right action. That means what you do with the body. So to not harm or hurt other, kill or even harm people with the physical body, like beating them or killing them, or sexual misconduct, abusing, causing harm to others through any bodily outlet. And because again, that's creating a lot of, people are going to take revenge on you. We're always hiding and worrying and fear about, I've already mentioned that. And then the right livelihood. So it means you're conforming your life to what you've understood. So it means you try to walk the talk, as it says. A lot of people talk, but they don't walk the talk, right? They speak nicely, but behind the scenes they're doing all kinds of things. So, and then the practice of meditation, developing mindfulness, concentration, right effort, the effort to do all those things. So to change the habits that we've been accumulating for, our whole life, we spend so much time and effort in creating this web of negative karma. So you can't just expect it to come unraveled and, very quickly. So for most people, it takes a long time. Because we have to know how to create the positive ones. That's why the right effort is important. The effort to abandon or stop doing those negative actions, like breaking the precepts, and then doing the opposites. We have to do the opposites because the mind sits idle, it'll just go back to its negative ways. So just don't tell the lie, tell the truth. Don't just steal something, give something to somebody. And so on. So that helps us to develop these more wholesome habits to supplant the negative ones. So our negative actions only stay strong because we keep repeating them. But if we don't have anything positive to replace them with, we'll just go on repeating them. So that's why we have to consciously the effort to cultivate wholesome states that we don't have. Like the habit of getting up early to practice meditation in the morning instead of sleeping late. Or the effort to come and meditate every day. Or to increase the amount of time you meditate to get more benefit from it. But the mind is always trying to make up excuses and so on. And so it takes effort to overcome those negative states of mind. So that's how we have to see, all of these aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path is integrated into, helping to reduce our negative actions that bring suffering and create new wholesome actions of body, speech, and mind that, reduces that pain and creates conditions for more happiness. Because the mind is not going to change by itself. There's a lot of thoughts these days in this new age stuff. Oh, you don't need to make any effort. Just everything will just happen by itself, Don't push it, Well, lots of luck, right? So, sure, after about 1 million more lifetimes, maybe it might come around. But why wait that long of suffering? Or starting right now, just stop telling lies. Stop using bad language. Stop intoxicating the mind with drinks or drugs. Stop hanging out with negative people. All these things that can be easily done, but you'll see how quickly they start to affect your mind. Isn't that right, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, friends, I think that may be enough for this Dhamma talk. Now, if any of you have any questions based on that, then feel free to ask some question you might have. You can just raise your hand. Yes, sir, you have a question?
Question.
No, I should beat you to the punch.
Sorry. I'm Sarah. I'm Sarah.
I have my own feelings about diet and eating meat but how do you feel the consumption of meat can create karma?
Well, that's a question that's being, debated a lot amongst various types of people, even people who are practicing the Buddhist teaching. Now, the Buddha, if you have to examine the teachings of the Buddha. Just don't run off and believe what so-and-so said or so-and-so said. But the Buddha had the precept about not intentionally killing animals. So why would he say that? Because he saw that animals also trying to be happy. And why should we deprive an animal of life just to satisfy ourselves? And especially in these countries where it's easy to get other sources of beyond animal meat, for health. And so he didn't, but in the days of the Buddha, a lot of people ate meat, so he didn't forbid the monks to accept meat. So in the beginning, monks went out on alms round. It means they took their begging bowls and went out to villages. People didn't know they were coming, but they came around. And so they would offer whatever they had, whether it's a piece of meat or anything else, rice. And the monk, if he so wanted to, he could eat it, or he could keep it for later and feed it to the kutta. But he said, if a family invites you, this is what's important. A lot of people misunderstand this. If the family, that a family had a chicken in the backyard, and then they invited you, oh, can you come next Saturday and for lunch? And say, okay. And then a day or two later, you heard some people talking, oh, you know what? The Smith family, they invited the monk, they're going to kill the chicken. And if you heard that, you would have to say, no, I can't go. But so if the monk heard or seen or suspect that the animal was killed specifically to feed them, they should not eat it. Because that would be a kind of a karmic connection, an unconscious or subtle kind of karmic connection. So that is the stipulation. So you can see it was because of the connection to karma that he did that. Otherwise, he let them eat meat if they didn't hear or see or suspect that it was killed for them, right? So this is how we have to understand, rather than getting caught up in arguments about it. We have to see the meaning behind it. But ultimately it comes to each person's, like I personally chose not to eat meat, not because of some moral thing necessarily, because, of all the, but, if we're practicing loving kindness and sending out thoughts of kindness to even animals and others, how can we justify that by then adding to the demand for other people to kill the animals? Now, a lot of Buddhists are kind of smug and, they enjoy eating meat. Well, I didn't kill it. I just went to the store and bought it. Yeah, but, the butchers are not going to kill those animals. They're going to get paid. And so it all comes back to, that. These arguments back and forth. Ultimately, it should be an individual choice. Does that clear up your thought about it?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. And then, the health reasons too. The reason why I stopped eating meat, because I was up trekking in Nepal and I'd been traveling across Europe as a hippie, just eating street food and stuff in Afghanistan and Turkey and Iran, where it's all covered with flies. And I wound up getting dysentery, really, really sick. My guts were tied in knots. And I was trekking up in the Himalayas in this village at the end of the trail. And this village was known, they raised a lot of goats, and they were slaughtering the goats outside, and blood was running all over the place. And I went to a house to stay for the night. I wasn't a monk then, I was still a layperson. And so I went to find a place to sleep at night. The only place to sleep in the house was underneath the hearth. Every house in those days had a stove in the middle of like a hearth, wood burning fire in remote villages. And they put these hunks of meat that they had slaughtered, hanging from big hooks
Oh,
over the cooking pots. And so to dry out the meat, right? And then at night, the lady was going to cook some rice. Or they supply food for the people staying there. And then, so I was watching this, and the lady, she took this big slab of meat and with a big rusty knife, going whacking off pieces of meat that fell into the stew pot. And I saw that, and my guts were tied in knots with pain. And I swore off meat at that point. Never again am I eating meat because of that, particular situation, right? So that's how I decided not to eat meat. Because I hadn't even studied Buddhism at that point, so I wasn't really that conscious about not killing animals and stuff. But it was because of that. But then later, and then I went down to India, and I cured my dysentery by not only stopping meat, but doing, cleaning up my diet in other ways, taking some medicine or whatever. And I went to a yoga ashram. And the yoga teacher was extolling the virtues of being a vegetarian. And, learning about other more healthful foods. We don't need to eat animals to live. And practicing compassion and so on, ahimsa, right? So gradually and then learning Buddhism, of course, that I fell into that, used that motivation, even more than just, the health standpoint. You have a question there?
You were talking about the Four Noble Truths, and I think you said, and we can finally reach the end of our suffering. Is that true for most people, or do you need to be fully enlightened to really come to a final end of suffering and still be living in the body? Because, I don't know, to me, suffering means different things. Confusion, or maybe physical pain or emotional.
Yeah, suffering has so many levels of it.
Yeah, but
from a scale from 100 down to 1. And suffering physically or suffering mentally. Now, we can overcome physical sufferings to some extent by taking medicines and living not doing extreme sports that we might die from, and other things, being mindful so you don't walk in front of traffic and get struck and killed by being unmindful or whatever it is. So by being mindful and living properly, we can reduce at least a lot of the unnecessary self-created physical sufferings. But still, the body's going to get old and you're going to die. But then there's mental sufferings, worry. Again, as I've already mentioned, worrying about having told lies or abused others, and so many things, not being satisfied with the present moment, just consumed with what I can get in the future, People living to win a lottery so they can, imagine what they're going to do for the rest of their life. And then that winds up causing them a lot of suffering too. So anyway, we have to little by little remove the sources of suffering. You're not going to do it all at once. And not even in one lifetime, probably. That's why in the graded path to enlightenment, it could take 7 lifetimes from the moment you entered the stream to attain full enlightenment, in order to unravel and purify all the knots of karma that we've accumulated. We don't know how much is in there. Our unconscious mind is like all these AI things, Endless amounts of information is in there from many, many, many past lives that we've gone through.
so being in the present moment helps us to really, really reduce.
Well, to tap into the happiness that comes from being in the present moment.
Yeah, then you don't.
See, a lot of people, if you take an adult, 40-year-old, a man or woman, and set them in the house, tell them to sit still, and don't move, and close your eyes, and don't fall asleep. You think they'll be able to do that? Because after a few minutes, they'll start to get antsy. What am I doing? What is this, Yeah, I got to go up and paint the fence, or go play some golf, or call out my friend. They can't just relax in the present moment without doing anything because they'll go to sleep. That's the key, to remain still and calm in the present moment, but not go to sleep, so that we can feel the present moment, the vibration of electrons, in the deepest part of your bones. That vibration of present moment awareness, which is, as I mentioned, it's like a perfectly tuned engine in idle gear. How many people have heard an engine idling? You all have cars, right?
Yeah.
So a really nice tuned engine, and it's just idling perfectly, like a cat purring, like meet the purring, right? And that's kind of like how our mind is when it's not thinking of the past or future, when it's resting and just feeling the life force bubbling through your veins. And then somebody revs up the engine, but the car doesn't move. So there's a lot of noise going on outside, or a lot of thoughts running through the back of your mind, or a lot of physical pains in the body. The mind's not moving because all those sensory stimulations, like the engine revving up. But if the mind's in neutral, it's not moving. That is meditation. Not getting absorbed into infinite space, infinite consciousness, all these formless jhanas that people talk about without really understanding what they are, and all kinds of other things. It's that state of awareness. That's the end of suffering. So, the Buddha gave a Dhammapada verse, it's like, just like a person who's trying to purify something. They just, little by little, they keep on turning over the thing and heating it up and turning and trying to, get some old piece of metal flexible and so on. So removing the imperfections little by little out of something, over a long period of time is what, like, the practice of the Dhamma. Okay, friends, I think we'll go ahead and bring this to a close. And I'm not sure if all this was recorded out there, but if it was, hope the people listening out there may be able to get something out of this. So we're going to be signing out now.